Get convenient sexual health care from anywhere with Planned Parenthood Telehealth. Whether you're on the go or on your lunch break, get the care you need at ppncs.org/telehealth.
You're listening to a Mint podcast brought to you by HT Smartcast.
Good morning, listeners. Welcome to Top of the Morning by Mint, your weekday newscast that brings you 5 major stories from the world of business. It's Friday, May 3rd, 2024. My name is Nelson John. Let's get started.
Top of the Morning by Mint.
Indian markets rose slightly on Thursday. Both Nifty and Sensex were up by around 0.18%. Godrej Industries was the biggest loser, washing away gains made by the announcements of its plans to split. Vedanta is another conglomerate that wants to head for a demerger. It has been preparing for this possibility for months, but the group finally has a crucial go-ahead, that of its lenders. Anirudh, Laskar and Shayan Ghosh report that a consortium of lenders led by the State Bank of India and including Bank of Baroda, ICICI Bank, Axis Bank and Punjab National Bank has given its go-ahead for the proposed split of Vedanta Limited into 6 different entities. Vedanta will now begin the process of dividing its debt worth $7 billion into these new companies. Freshworks now has a new person at the helm. Founder and longtime CEO Girish Mathrubootham stepped down yesterday. The news did little to excite investors. The Freshworks stock was down more than 25% at the time of recording this podcast. Dennis Woodside will be replacing Mathrubootham. Woodside came into the organization as a president 18 months ago, a period that was meant to be transitional. He has his task cut out and investors might find him more palatable than his predecessors, writes Ranjini Raghavan. Another reason why American investors have turned bearish is the lack of interest rate cuts by the US Federal Reserve. For months now, Americans have been anticipating a rate cut, but the Federal Reserve and its chairman, Jerome Powell, have constantly maintained the status quo, citing fragile macroeconomic data. Despite Powell's hawkish stance, data show inflation to be favorable. The Fed's current interest rate is the highest in nearly 25 years, writes our partners at the Wall Street Journal. A rate cut now will spur the economy, but the Feds want to be sure of subdued inflation before confirming any cuts. It's a precarious position, and Americans aren't the only ones watching. Every central banking authority throughout the world, including the RBI, looks at the US Federal Reserve for guidance on setting their own interest rates. All political parties promise some form of welfare schemes as part of their poll promises. Over the past decade, voters seem to remember the BJP's initiatives fondly. These schemes include monetary benefits as well as construction of roads and toilets. We invited political writer Ruhi Tiwari to write about how the incumbent party is faring well on these issues. Ruhi visits Assam, Uttar Pradesh, and Madhya Pradesh to speak to voters and the real effects of the BJP's welfare schemes. Turns out, these initiatives haven't trickled down well enough to certain people. Ruhi gets their inputs too as the election season rages on. Speaking of raging, let's talk about forest fires. Half of Uttarakhand's districts are currently seeing global warming-induced forest fires. In India, an abundance of dry leaves and high temperature turn out to be the perfect combination to inflame the woods. Sumant Banerjee writes about these fires, their causes, effects, and what the authorities can do to prevent or contain them. It's difficult to fight fire, but we can take measures to mitigate the damage caused by them, he explains. We'd love to hear your feedback on this podcast. Let us know by writing to us at feedback@theratelifemint.com. You may send us feedback, tips, or anything that you feel we should be covering from your vantage point in the world of business and finance. That's all for today. Thank you for listening. We'll be back next week with a fresh episode of Top of the Morning. Have a nice weekend.
Top of the Morning by Mint.
The South Dakota Stories, Volume 7. My trip to South Dakota was the best summer ever. Now I don't need to go to Mars because I've been to the Badlands. And I caught a bigger walleye than Dad when we went to the Missouri River. Then I rode my bike through these huge rocks called needles. Ooh, I also saw my first herd of bison, even a fuzzy furry baby one. I can't wait to go back and see more. There's so much South Dakota, so little time.